Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, right?
Hey, it's a pleasure as always to see everybody here tonight, and we're going to move on from the creation story, and we're going to go ahead and move into our next lesson, which is going to be Parsha 4, and we get into that a little bit later on, Vayera, and he appeared. That's going to be tonight's lesson. And anybody have any testimonies, anything they would like to share on how the Father has been esteeming them, giving them insight, showing them love, mercy, kindness, happiness, joy?
I got home today and I just gave y'all thanks. I was like, thank you y'all for a safe trip home. Like, for some reason I was just really thankful to just make it home.
Wow, was that tough? With the traffic?
It wasn't even traffic. It's just like thinking about the stuff going on in the world and that he has, exercised mercy.
Right.
I think we all get that feeling once in a while where we just make it home. Like, you know what? I could be, upset for something, but yeah, I thank you. Because at the end of the day, I started thinking about, he's allowed me to know him and live my life knowing him. So that when I go through things, I'm not in perplexity, but I could just give him thanks. Like, thank you for teaching me this lesson and allowing me to grow. Instead of just being ignorant of everything and just depressed for no reason and not sure why. It's just giving him thanks, like, for growth and allowing me to know him as a father, as a Abba.
Wow. Yeah, it's always important to give the Father thanks. And if you feel that urge and you need that extra boost, absolutely.
So when I got in the house, that feeling of thankfulness was still there. I looked at my child, I was like, let's go to the Bible study. Like, why you doing it? Because I had a little bit of food and getting a little on the sleepy side.
Yeah.
So you know not to feed him until after. Please don't feed the bear.
Absolutely.
After 9.
After 9, there you go.
Right.
I just want to thank you again for the exciting things that I believe he's about to do in the lives of Mr. Carr here in this congregation. And I'm watching the news, I'm watching different stuff, and every day I'm watching how they're just saying just stuff that is in the Word.
Right.
And you're watching this thing just get closer and closer and closer to the return of Yashra'al. And I'm excited about that. I'm scared, but I'm excited at the same time. And I just believe that we're going to be okay. We're going to be all right.
Yeah, we can definitely see that things are beginning to really, really heat up. So let's make sure we keep that oil lit in that candlesticks, because this is getting serious.
And that's why it's important for y'all to be in study, in congregation, because you might miss something.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, Lord, for his mercy. And just thank you for his mercy. And I'm expecting some good news on Friday.
Okay.
So I don't want to just throw it out there right now, but until I'm certain.
Right.
But I know I'm about to make a year at my job, so I'll get a raise for that.
Okay, hallelujah.
Happy about that. But I really feel like I'm stepping into a new season in my life, and I just thank the Father for his mercy. Because even when I've fallen short and been disobedient, he's still faithful.
Wow.
Right. Even when I've been rebellious and knew the right way to go, he still extended his favor.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Just so to bring me back to repentance and bring me back into good standards with me,
Wow.
So I just thank the Father for his mercy and his grace and just the opportunity to be here.
Wow, hallelujah. Very good. Excellent. All right. Okay, Mr. McCall, what we're going to do is blow the shofar 7 times. And we'll have Zabul to bring us in with prayer. And we'll read our declaration. All right?
day's lives and trials and everything that went on to this day, and be here at the end of the day as it begins to go into the night, and be able to partake of your word. It's the ultimate food, it's the ultimate bread, Father. And we thank you, Father, and we ask you to meet us here today, that we may be able to feel your presence. We pray that they were able to feel your presence on Facebook. Pray that people will tune in. We pray that decisions will be made, Father, that will allow us to be able to come together as a family, Mishpachah, and live righteous, set apart. We thank you for these wonderful testimonies that have gone forth. We know that you're there for us, and even when things look crazy, there are you in the midst of it. As that one poem said, carrying us through. We pray that you would open understandings of our hearts and our minds, that you may be able to, and that we may be able to receive what it is you're going to say through Moreh tonight. For those who could not make it, we ask that you give them health, safe. Those who are on the way, we pray that you give them traveling graces. But more than anything, that you show all of us mercy. That in the morning, we'll be able to say, not only did he bring us through yesterday, but we made it through the day to be able to start a new day afresh. Thank you, we praise you, we magnify you, we lift you up. And again, as always, we don't worship you because you said we must. That's part of it, but we worship you because we know you're worthy of all our praise and everything we have. You are the center of our attention, that we may do what we have to do to bring about your kingdom. That is our only goal in life. That is our main focus, is to bring about your kingdom, or to do our part, at least. We know it can't be done without you in the power of your set-apart spirit, without your son, Yashra'al, but we know that if we can just, at least we can try. Praise you, magnify you, lift you up in your son, Yashra'al's name, we pray. Hallelujah.
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 You got one? You want to share mine or something? If you don't want to.
Okay, Mr. Carr, we're going to continue on. We're going to be reading the Renewed Covenant in the book of Yirmiyahu 31 to 33. Behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Yashra'al and the house of Yehudah, not according to the covenant that I made you their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break. Although I was a husband unto them, saith Yahuwah. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Yashra'al after those days, saith Yahuwah. I will put my law in their inward parts, and write it in their hearts, and will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
The Ten Commandments, the book of Exodus, or Shemot, the 20th chapter, verses 1 through 17. And Yahuwah spake all these words, saying, I am Yahuwah thy Elohim, which have brought thee out of the land of Mizraim, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other Elohim before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, thy sovereign, thy Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy to the thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of
shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Shabbat of Yahuwah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yahuwah made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Yahuwah blessed the Shabbat day, and made it set apart. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land, which Yahuwah thy Elohim giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
All name to the Father. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
All esteem to the Father. Hallelujah. Okay. So, Mishpachar, what we're going to be doing again. The title of today's class tonight is Parsha number 4. The 4 only means that if we were doing this in order, this would actually be the 4th week. And the lesson would be in the 4th week. The Hebrew word would be Vayera, spelled V-A-Y-E-R-A. And as we begin to learn our Hebrew, the word Vayera means and he appeared. All right. And what's important about that title, and he appeared, we must understand who is it that appeared to the nation of Yashra'al while we were in the wilderness. Again, the operative word there is he appeared, and being able to identify exactly who is the he. But before we get started, we want to make sure that we give all the esteem to the Father, Yahuwah, for sending his son, Yashra'al HaMashiach, to be that atoning sacrifice for the nation of Yashra'al. So again, all esteem belongs to the Father. Names are very, very important. They're so important where I have to say that they're extremely important, because it's actually the names that actually it's the definition of the name that tells the story. So a person can have a name which is important, but it's important for us to understand that we live out the character or the meaning of the word. That's what we should be looking at. And we can also see the Father's salvation plan with actually the definition. I'm going to write down a couple of things here to make sure that we're all on board in understanding the Father's salvation plan through the Zadokite bloodline. And the word Zadokite just means righteous. For example, we have Adam. We're talking about a righteous bloodline, and the Father's always been dealing with a righteous bloodline. So Adam, we know, is it means man or mankind, and we're talking about a particular man, and so we use always this word here, the, which is the definite article. So we have to understand which man that the Father is actually referring to. And then we have the word Seth, which would be the next Zadokite. I'll say the word priest, okay, because the priesthood started with Adam. We have Seth, and the word Seth means was appointed. Again, because names means a whole lot, it is very important that we follow out the definition of our names. The next word is Enosh. Okay, Enosh, and it means mortal. Okay, means mortal. And what I find important about Enosh's name, and it means mortal, I want everybody to understand that we're actually spiritual beings, all right, living out a physical encounter. We're all spiritual beings living out a physical encounter. Then we have the word, or the name, Canaan. And his name means sorrow. Sorrow. The fifth person in line in this Zadokite priest line is Mahahil. Mahalel. Sometimes you might see with another L. But what I found important with this name here, when you begin to look at this priest line, this is the first time you see this word right here, L. The very first time. And it means the blessed of Yahuwah. The blessed of Yahuwah. Then we have number 6, we have Jared. And Jared's name means will come down. We talked about the Father's salvation plan. We have number 7. I don't know if you're still able to catch everything on the camera. You still good?
Yep. You can go to the bottom.
Okay, Methuselah. Methuselah. And his name means his death will bring. We have Lamech. His name means the despairing. And we're going to start with this one here, Noah. His name means comfort, shalom, rest. So, when we begin to look at this priestly line here, and see the Father's salvation plan from the very beginning, and names mean a whole lot, especially when we begin to look at the definition of the name. So when we read this now, we have the man was appointed mortal sorrow. The blessed Yahuwah will come down, his death will bring the despairing comfort and rest. That's how we read that. And so when we begin to look at now the word Adam, and we talk about again the man, we need to understand who exactly it is that the Father is referring to in all of this right here. All right, so again, we just want to make sure that we keep everything Hebraic, and if we were to do that, we should have no problems reading the rest of the scriptures. All right, so what I'll do with the others is I'll just call that out because we're all familiar with this. The book of Genesis, that just means in the beginning. And in the beginning, the Father called out names, and that's the word Exodus, the word Leviticus, and he called. And we know that there was a group of people that was actually called from a particular place. They was taken into the wilderness, which is the word Numbers, and then we have Deuteronomy, which means words, and this is where those people that was taken out of captivity was given the words, and the words were Torah. Right? Let's bring this over here. Just want to make sure that everything is crystal clear. And everything is based upon Torah. Everything is based upon Torah. Again, we're doing what we call parashas, and if we were keeping this thing in order, this would be the 4th week. And what the parasha does now, it gives us a better understanding of the story. You get a chance to read and look at a lot of the Hebrew. And then we have what we call half-Torahs. And the half-Torahs are just the writings and the prophets and some scriptures that actually help us link everything together so that everybody can be in one accord at the end of the day. All right? So that's just a little intro. And so to make sure that we understand how important the Father is, let's go to the book of Acts. Let's go to the book of Acts, and let's look at the 7th chapter. Acts, the 7th chapter. We're going to start at the first verse. And we're going to be reading from the Aramaic Parsha. To those out there on Facebook and YouTube. We have Stephen here now in a situation where he's been accused of blaspheming the set-apart spirit, or the Ruach, and we'll just pick it up from there, all right? Verse 1, and the high priest asked him, are these things so? And he said, men and brethren, and our fathers hear you. The esteem, or the Elohim of esteem, appeared to our father Abraham. So the person in question here is Abraham. When he was between the rivers, before he came to reside in Haran, and he said unto him, depart from thy country and from thy kindred, and go to a land which I will show to you. And then Abraham departed from the land of the Chaldeans, and came and dwelt in Haran. And from there, after his father had died, Elohim removed him to this land, which is Jerusalem, or the land of Canaan, in which you this day dwell. And he did not give him an inheritance in it, not even a foot track, but he promised that he would give it him as an inheritance to him and to his seed, when as yet he had no son. We're talking about Abraham here. And the father spoke with him, telling him that his seed should be a sojourner in a strange land, and they would enslave them or ill-treat them 400 years. And that nation whom they will serve in bondage will I judge, says the Father, and afterwards they shall come forth and serve me in this place. And he gave to him the covenant of circumcision, and then begot he Isaac, and circumcised him on the 8th day. And Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot our fathers, the 12 tribes of Israel. The reason why this is so important, Mr. Carr, is that everything that we have Stephen saying here, it was all validated through what we call the covenant of circumcision. All right? That's the outward mark of the Father's covenant that he made with Abraham. So covenants are very important, and I just wanted to show here how important it is for us to understand covenants, how important it is for us to understand what the Father is actually trying to do in these last days with his people, and sharing with everybody that we're going to be leaving out of this place real soon, which is good news, as Abu was talking about, a little bit earlier. And we must return to the place where the Father placed his name at, which is Jerusalem. And everybody should still be aware that we're in captivity to this very day. We are in captivity. Now, the book of Bereshit, or the book of Genesis, the 18th chapter. 18th chapter. Let's take a look at it. All right, because some questions came up regarding what's going on in Genesis, the 19th chapter, verse 24. But let's try to see where all of this began at. The book of Genesis, the 18th chapter, verse 1. It says now, the way that King James has this here is, it has the word Lord, L-O-R-D, and it has it in all capital letters. It says, and the Lord appeared unto him, which is Abram, in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day, or they have in a lot of versions, at noon. So we have here, Abraham had just gotten circumcised. Okay, so he's relaxing, okay, at the tent of the door, and it says that Yahuwah appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day, verse 2. And he lifted up his eyes, and lo, 3 men stood by him, and when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself towards the ground. Just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, how many men did Abraham encounter?
3.
3 men. All right. Are these men, or are these, as it is commonly known, angels?
Malachim angels.
So these are angels, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are angels. Now, what's interesting about what's going on in Genesis, the 18th chapter, what we would then need to do is figure out why are we saying that these are actually angels? And this is where we're going to need some classroom participation. What brings you to the understanding that these are actually angels and not men, or these are men and not angels?
Bowing himself.
What's that now?
Him bowing down to them.
Because they were bowing down to them, okay?
I would say honestly, if we think of what angels mean and what Malachim mean, it could be either earthly messengers or heavenly messengers. Honestly.
Right. And what's interesting now is that the word angel, there's no such word as angel.
Yeah, it's not.
Right. There's no such word. I mean, this old Anglo-Saxon word, there's no such thing. And so when you look at that word men, it just means enos. So it's not telling you that whether it's from this, just this verse alone, it's not telling you that these are angels that came from Shamayim,
Right.
manifested themselves here on the planet Earth, and now they're entertaining Abraham here. Because remember now, we also have a situation where there were messengers that appeared to Miriam while the Mashiach was a baby. And so that word malach means, it just means messenger. That's all what it basically means. What's interesting about verse 18 is the word appeared is the word Vayera. And it says that he appeared. So the Father appeared to Abraham in a physical form as these 3 messengers here. My point is that it wasn't Yahuwah himself, but it was actually his messengers that actually is conversating with Abraham. Meaning now is that, I like the science in the medical realm there. I really love that. And the best way that I can describe this here now is that I will look at the Father as what we call like a DNA gene, a DNA. And we know that the DNA, it never leaves the nucleus at all. It doesn't leave the nucleus. But the way that the DNA actually gets the message out to the rest of the body now is that it sends out another gene called an RNA. Okay, and that would be like your messenger gene. And so the DNA now makes a copy of itself. Okay, so the message that's inside of the DNA, okay, it sends out a copy, and we have got an RNA, and then it goes out into the body, okay, and it delivers the message. And to show you how unique this is now is that the RNA now, it doesn't return to the Father. It dies delivering the message. But if you were to take this a step further, everything goes back to the Father. But what I'm just trying to show here now is that the Father sends out messengers, okay, to actually deliver his word here. And so what we have here now is that we have the Father, and we not get caught up in the whole thing where, because a lot of people are breaking this down where they're saying that Yahuwah himself, okay, appeared to Abraham, and that's not the case here, because we see that the Father is actually dealing with messengers. Now, this where it gets real interesting at now. In verse 3, verse 3 says, and said Yahuwah, if I have now found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Now, who is Abraham speaking to here?
A man.
Who? You said a man?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's speaking to a man. All right. So what we're going to be doing now is that we're going to look at because there's three individuals here.
Do you want to know why I said a man?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's so broad. Because there are three men here.
Right.
And we see that Abraham is having a conversation here, and these three men are actually messengers of Yahuwah. But we'll get to it. We'll go ahead down. And said Yahuwah, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves, which is plural, under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort you your hearts. After that you shall pass on, for therefore are you come to your servant. And they said, so do as you have said. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah, and said, make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. And Abram ran into the herd, and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it into singular a young man, and he hastened to dress it. And he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them, plural. And he stood by them, plural, under the tree, and they, plural, did eat. And they said unto him, where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, behold, in the tent. And he, Abraham, said, and he said, singular. He said, I, singular, will certainly return unto you according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah, your Isha, O wife, shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent which was behind him, singular. And Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure in my sovereign or Lord, Adon King, my Adon King, being old also. And so right now we know what's going on with this conversation that Abraham is having so far. It's regarding the birth of Isaac, right? And so should she have pleasure, and the pleasure is not intercourse like I've heard some teachings. The pleasure is that she would be able to bring forth a child, because she didn't have any children prior. Verse 13. And Yahuwah said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, surely I of a surety bear a child which am old. Is anything too hard for Yahuwah? So, verse 13, we have, and Yahuwah said unto Abraham, and then this Yahuwah is saying in verse 14. Now, there's no chapters and there's no verses, question marks, or periods, anything like that. But this Yahuwah is saying, is there anything too hard for Yahuwah? So I'm just trying to make sure that we're following along with the pronouns and singular tenses and pluralities that's going on in this chapter here. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he, singular, said, No, but thou didst laugh. And the men, plural, rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom. And Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. So how many men do we have here still so far? Three, okay. And Yahuwah said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of Yahuwah. So Yahuwah is speaking to Abraham, and then Yahuwah is saying that he knows of a certainty that Abraham would teach his children and on all the ways of Yahuwah, to do justice and judgment, that Yahuwah may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. Yahuwah said, Blessed, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I, Yahuwah, will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is coming to me, and if not, I will know. How many individuals or entities do we now have here? Do we still see 3, or is it 4? Yeah, that's the reason why I wanted everybody to make sure that they was following along here. And Yahuwah said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because its sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me. It is not, I will know. It's not a trick question. When it said, and Yahuwah said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because the sin is very grievous, and then it says, I will go down. If we have Yahuwah here, and then we have in verse 21, I will go down, it was understood by some that is now going back to 18:1, where we have now the messenger gene, okay, Yahuwah now interacting with these 3 men. When it says, I will go down, it just means that he's going to visit. It's not talking about, again, the Father, Yahuwah himself, is going to come down and actually visit Sodom and Gomorrah. That's not what that's talking about.
So you're saying those 3 are going to go down?
All right, these 3 here. Actually, these 3 here, absolutely. These 3 messenger genes here. I will go down now and see whether they have done together according to the cry of it, which is coming to me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence and went toward Sodom. But Abraham stood yet before Yahuwah. Now, who is this?
No, sir.
Okay, this is the Mashiach. Hallelujah. So this whole conversation that's going on now, okay, is Yahuwah the Son, not Yahuwah the Father. There's Yahuwah the Father, there's Yahuwah the Son. So this whole conversation that's going on again here is Yahuwah the Son. And what was interesting about this now is that when you go to verses 17, I'll just read this real quick. And Yahuwah said, Shall I hide from Abraham the thing which I should do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. When we read now verses 17 and 18, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Because he's talking about a promise, okay, that was made to Abraham. The first thing that should come to mind is Genesis 15th chapter, when we see now the whole thing about the 400 years. It talks about the covenant that he made. So we see that smoking furnace going between the pieces there now. We know now that was an actual foreshadowing of Yahushua HaMashiach. That's all that's going on here. Because he's actually able to verify what happened in Genesis the 15th chapter. One more time. And Yahuwah says, Shall I hide from Abraham the thing which I should do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great nation, which is in Genesis the 15th chapter, and a mighty nation, and all nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, and he knew him through the covenant that he made in Genesis the 15th chapter, that he would command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of Yahuwah to do justice and judgment, that Yahuwah may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. Verse 20. And Yahuwah said, this is Yahuwah Elohim, and Yahuwah said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is coming to me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence and went towards Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before Yahuwah. And Abraham drew near and said, wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure, there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from you to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all earth do right? Which is of course. And Yahuwah said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous men within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sake. And Abraham answered and said, behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto Yahuwah, which am but dust and ashes. Peradventure, there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous, will thou destroy all the city for the lack of 5. And he said, if I find there 45, I will not destroy it. Verse 29. And he spoke unto him yet again and said, peradventure, there shall be 40 found there. And he said, I will not do it for 40's sake. And he said unto him, oh, let not Yahuwah be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure, there shall 30 be found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto Yahuwah. Peradventure, there should be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. And he said, oh, let not Yahuwah be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure, 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. And Yahuwah went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned into his place. Are there any questions with anything so far? Okay, hallelujah. Now, and there came 2 angels that they have here to Sodom at even, and Lot sat at the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them. He bowed himself with his face towards the ground. Again, we don't want people to get sidetracked, anything like that with this word angel. The word angel just means messenger. That's all. That's all that it means. We want to kind of like keep everything Hebraic. We don't want anybody thinking of, these white, small, Caucasian babies with wings on their backs flying all over the place, and that's not what we're trying to get here. All right. So these are actually messengers. So the question now becomes, what happened to the other one?
Sorry, what? Say that?
We now have 2 messengers here. What happened to the other one?
Love.
Yep, that's an easy answer. That was going to be that. He just left. Right. And so we now have Yahuwah Elohim going back to his abode. All right? He's going back to his abode here now. So we have these 2 messengers. They're going to be the ones that's going to be orchestrating everything else from here on out. And Lot said, behold now, my sovereign, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, no, but we will abide in the streets all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house, and he made them a feast, and did bake 11 bread, and they did eat. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, could pass the house round about, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, Where are the men which came into thee this night? Bring them out unto us that we may know them. And Lot went out at the door unto them and shut the door after him and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wicked or wickedly. Behold, now I have 2 daughters, which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do you to them as it is good in your eyes. Only to these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. Now, this thing has caused a lot of problems in Israel. Why would Lot now make such a claim, okay, knowing the behavior of these men and these sodomites, okay? You could even go into, I have to bring my book here, but you can even go to the book of Jubilees where they talked about how this whole thing, where they had these rituals where it was in the 4th month where they would like swap wives and have, doing this feast and have orgies and Mardi Gras and all this whole craziness that they were doing. And so knowing the behavior of these men, why would Lot make such a suggestion for his daughters to be violated like that? Anybody know the answer? Do anybody see a justifiable reason why he did that?
I'm gonna say because he was living in that land, and the customs of the land, but also if I remember it right, in Eastern culture, once someone came under your roof, it is your duty to protect them,
right,
and to treat them like one of your own. So once they entered under his roof, Lot wasn't stupid. He knew who they were first off.
right.
I was gonna say that.
He wasn't gonna he knew that if something did happen to them, then the destruction of Sodom would happen. That's what I believe, because he knew who they were.
Right. Okay, excellent. You got something on something?
I was gonna say the same thing, that he knew who these men were. And I believe that he offered the daughters. Well, my thing is, if he knew who the men were, he knew they were capable of handling themselves.
Right.
So why would he offer the daughters? That's what puzzles me. But maybe he was just trying to show, trying to show these men that he was, he was not as the other people there.
Right. I mean, everybody's answer was correct, because once a guest comes into your house, you're supposed to treat that guest as if he was your own. And so it's not your responsibility now to protect and to take care of this guest. But his daughters now, I mean, they're also inside of his house.
They've been doing it anyway. They probably been doing it anyway.
Who's the daughter?
Did Lot lie when he said there was no man?
Yes.
I'm saying, like, as far as they know the customs there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So for him to just willingly, like, I'll give you my daughters, he knew what the custom was from the get. For him to offer his daughters in that way. Because, like you said, we know in the book of Jubilees that what they were doing in that time. Lot knew that when he moved up in there. You know what I'm saying?
You mean the town was doing it, right?
Right, the time. So that's what I'm saying. Like they were doing it anyway. So Lot felt like giving his daughters would appease that desire that they had.
Right.
For the atone to them doing a greater sin. You know what I'm saying? Which would be to the men.
Especially in his house.
Absolutely. But what's interesting about this now is that when these lewd practices were being done, Lot and his 2 daughters, they were not involved in those practices at all.
Right.
And so the only thing that we can gather from this here now is that when we read scriptures, just because we see something said doesn't make it Torah.
Right.
Okay? And so to have someone violate your daughters, okay, you would never find that anywhere in Torah. So not trying to make a big deal out of this, but just in case any women are out there that are watching, okay, we're not telling anybody now to put your daughters out of the house and have them violated. That's not what we're supposed to be getting here from this particular passage. But we do see that he's been humble towards his guests, but never to let your daughters now be raped and ravished by strangers. But again, we're just going to get back to this.
That would be prostituting your daughters, was
Absolutely. I mean, we don't want to do that either. I mean, again, violating because these are Shemitic women here. I mean, you don't violate the daughters. And when you begin to look at the Messianic scriptures here now, is that you see the word Aleph Tavs now by Lot's name, by his daughter's names, and by his wife's name. And so that puts us now in another category, because now we know that these now are ordained people. And to let you know that Lot's two daughters and Lot's wife, you know, she was kind of like a little wishy-washy here. We're going to find out about that. But Lot was actually a righteous man. He had problems with Abraham, and that's the reason why they had to split. And we see that Lot was actually carnal because he looked at the big city. Okay, so he looked at the big city, he set up camp there, but not understanding now, trying to be a farmer in the big city, it came with a whole lot of complications. Where now we have Abraham, he's settling now in a more, I'm not going to say a rural area, but an area now where there's not a whole lot of problems and confusion. Mm-hmm. Because we are agricultural people, and so now he looked at the eye, and he chose the city, the glamour, and the lights. And a lot of times when you move into the city with the glamour and the lights, this comes along with it.
Right.
So we have to also understand. This is what we should have been getting now out of this, the whole situation with the daughters here. Let me speed this up here now. We only got about 10 minutes. Verse 19, and they said, stand back. And they said again, this one fellow came into sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Now will we deal worse with you than with them. And they pressed sore upon the door and came near to break the door. When you ever get the chance to see what's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, I mean, there was a whole lot of thievery and crazy stuff that was going on. Stealing people's property and then taking them to the judges, and then the judges working against the adversaries here. I mean, it was a mess. But anyway, but the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them and shut the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said unto Lot, hast thou here any besides son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is great, as waxing great before the face of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah has sent us as messengers now to destroy it. And Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, because he had other daughters now. So he went out and spoke with his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, up, get you out of this place, for Yahuwah will destroy this city. But he seemed as one mocked unto his sons-in-laws. And when the morning arose, then the messengers hastened Lot, saying, arise, take your wife and your two daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. So now, what we have here now, there's a big awakening of the Hebrew Israelites, all right? And a lot of times, our mothers, our fathers, our sons and daughters, aunts and uncles, they're not going to be able to come to this understanding. And when you go to them now and tell them about the destruction that's going to happen here, you're going to find yourself in a situation like Lot, where they're going to mock you. They're not going to take anything that you're saying serious. So it's going to come to the point where there's no more talk. And the loved ones that you grew up with, that you knew all your life, you're going to have to leave them behind. This story gets so in detail and so in depth, where it tells you that, I mean, this is all symbolic now. If you're on the rooftop, don't even come down to get anything out of the house. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to move real quick. The reason why we're going to be doing these Torah portions here now is because when that time comes, all of this rehearsal that we're talking about, when that day comes, baby, listen, it's time for us to go.
Yeah.
I can't sit here now and have a 10-hour conversation with you.
Right.
You know, and that's what a lot of, I mean, again, there's a reason why we're doing this. And everybody has to be on one accord. And the way that this is going to happen, we're going to show how this is actually going to work. Or we get a glimpse of how this is going to work. We're going to all hear the voice. We're going to all hear the voice. But what's going to happen now is that those who are not in covenant relationship with the Father, they will not hear the voice. And so when you begin to see this mass migration, we pray that nobody is playing games. And the only reason why I'm stressing this particular verse here is because Lot was given one more chance to try and save his loved ones. I can't necessarily say that's going to happen in this case, but the scripture does tell us now. I just find it real interesting. Just as it was during the days of Noah, it talked about Sodom and Gomorrah. So shall it be now in these last end days here. So I just pray that everybody takes that into consideration. But Mr. Carr, what we're going to do, all right, we're going to stop there. We're going to take our time with this here, and we stopped at verse 16. We stopped there, and we'll pick back up next week with verse 16. Are there any questions, anything so far? Okay, we talked about the 2 Yehoahs.
Now, let me ask you a question, because I hear a lot of the homosexuals say that is not the reason he destroyed the city. And a lot of that they say that he destroyed it for all the sin that was there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hear a lot of the Christians say that he destroyed it for homosexuality. What's your take on it?
Sodom and Gomorrah is a copy, or is the daughter of what's going on here today.
Mm-hmm.
There's homosexuality. There's a corrupt judicial system.
Exactly.
It's just a whole host of things. So I would never say it was just because of homosexuality.
Mm-hmm.
What I do know is that immorality in sex is the root of it. And the reason why is because in the beginning, this whole thing has been about trying to destroy a righteous seed.
Mm-hmm.
It has always been that way. Scripture shares with us that nations go to war with other nations, not so much maybe now, but it's for land. But everything now is centered around the woman. It is, I mean, it is the facts. It is that. Because scripture even shares with us is that how kings will go to war with other kings, and they would bring everything back that they have, they bring it to the woman. He will go down to the depths of hell, and bring it all back to her. Mm-hmm. She would even now make a mockery of him, where she would even take his crown off of his head and put it on her head. If she's not happy, you know what? Everything falls apart. We see the situation even in the book of Genesis, and this becomes controversial, where we see now this is a gender problem. Because the father set up from the very beginning who was supposed to be the head and who was given the responsibility of the house. It was an adversary now who came and said, listen, you know what? Has Yahuwah Elohim said that you should not eat of the tree of good and evil? But it began to describe what this tree could actually do. It was able to bring, it was actually able to usurp the original authority, because the adversary had the conversation with Eve. He didn't have the conversation with Adam. Mm-hmm. Eve brought the conversation to Adam. What I'm trying to share here now is that when you look at Genesis in detail, Eve did get the opportunity now where she is now in a position, and I use this word real loosely now, of authority. Meaning now is that there was a change in position. There was a change in position. And what the Father's going to now do is put everything back into its rightful place. Mm-hmm. Because all of the beauties of the world that the adversary offered Eve, the adversary offered now the Mashiach, those very same things, okay, when he went up to the top of the mount and he fasted for 40 days and for 40 nights. Mm-hmm. All the kingdoms of the world. Mm-hmm. And there was the same thing now that was offered now to Eve. I say all that to say now again, the cities, everything is geared towards a feminine vibration. There's nothing, there's like no masculinity anymore anywhere. And so we just want to make sure that we understand scriptures properly. So when we talk about what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, it's all based upon the woman don't need the man.
Right.
And so being that that's happening now is that the natural use of the woman is no longer being used. Meaning now, so it's now woman with woman, and there's now man with man. That's what it is, you know. And we see this now taking place because when we look at the scripture, especially the book of Deuteronomy 28th chapter, it got to the point where the woman stopped respecting the man. And the reason why she stopped respecting the man is because during the time of slavery, for example, there was nothing that you can do, okay, when the so-called white man, the adversary now, took the children.
No.
There was nothing that you can do. And so the woman now, in a lot of the movies that we see, the slavery movies, she was so in love with her children that she left you and went with the children. Because there's nothing that you can do. And so because in the Garden of Eden, our father Adam didn't take his rightful position in that situation that happened in the Garden with Eve. He didn't check her, because we notice now is that when she did what she did, nothing happened.
Right.
Things was brought to Adam's attention because he was given the commission to guard the garden. Once he fell off the wagon, that's when the father said, listen now, you know what? Now we have a problem. And so now that we're no longer under a masculine vibration, everything that we see here now today is feminine. Everything. And what's interesting about the whole thing too now is that when you see somebody, at the end of the day, somebody has to be masculine. You see two lesbians, one of them is masculine.
One of them beating on the other.
Yeah, that's what it is. You see two men, okay, one of them is going to play the feminine role, the other is going to play the masculine role. So either way you slice it, somebody has to play a position. So when I say Sodom and Gomorrah, all the things that are going on today was going on during the time of Sodom and Gomorrah.
That's in America, definitely, but not just in America. It's
No.
all over the world.
No, absolutely not. But then you go to the book of Revelation 18th chapter, it says that, let me just read that right quick. Just right quick. I want to do this verbatim. Revelation the 18th chapter says, (18:1). And after these things, I, John the Revelator, saw another messenger come down from Shamayim, having great power, and the earth was enlightened with his esteem. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, it is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Like you said, not just in America. It says, for all nations have drunken of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxing rich through the abundance of her delicacies. They even have now a gay network. I just found this out like a week ago.
Yeah.
A gay network. And it's really getting crazy. This whole thing with LG, with BT, whatever. Yeah, so what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, and we see it happening today, where politicians, all right, are seeing that lifestyle in that community is so important, and they have such a strong number that it has to be addressed, okay, during elections,
right,
because they need the vote. Who would have ever have thought that that community would have gotten so big where their votes now count? There was I don't know whether he's still running, but there's a presidential candidate. He's running, and he's homosexual.
Yeah, he's still running.
But he's still running, and so I'm like, wow, what else can happen?
Oh, a whole lot.
I mean, but if you think about it, every great so-called nation has fallen due to sexual immorality and all of the sins that Sodom and Gomorrah did. And like you said, I mean, even if you think about the Romans and the Greeks, all of the orgies and the men sleeping with the little boys and all of that, they did those things until all the politicians was corrupted and they turned on each other. And then that nation fell and was taken over by another nation that did the same exact thing. So it's just, it's a perversion from what is righteous to what is wicked. So it's just showing us that once Yahuwah comes, he's going to restore the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Back to where it originally was supposed to be. Like you said, with Eve, she took what it originally was supposed to be and it was perverted. It was switched.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And you see that with Sodom and Gomorrah. Everything was switched. But when Yahuwah come back, all these nations that try to rule the wrong way, you're going to see how they did it wrong. Because Yahuwah was going to restore how it was supposed to be.
That's going to be amazing just in itself to see.
Yeah. So this is the reason why this is important. I mean, when we begin to look at the definition of the names and everything like that, and we see the sorrow and what actually happened with the sin in the golden, in the garden, and we begin to look at these names here, there still remaineth a rest of comfort for the nation of Israel. Because now, everybody, not everybody, a lot of people are trying that lifestyle. You know, the Wendy Williams, that whole thing with that gay thing and the RuPaul's, and there was some character on BET. He was hosting some old little show. I mean, all this other crazy stuff, and yeah. I mean, all these guys. I mean, and they say that it is big money. I mean, these homosexuals are saying that there's big money in that lifestyle.
Oh, it is. Well, they have no kids, so they have no money.
They got transgender kids now.
Transgender kids.
Yes, there's children, 8
Well, no,
and 7
people,
years old, out here transgender.
I was looking at something the other day, and it was saying that The Rock,
The wrestler?
yeah, he's raising his children
Non-binary.
yeah, non-gender. So they wear pink and blue. They wear all that.
Yeah.
See, I don't watch the news here, because where I come from, if you have a child that's showing signs like how they openly have children being transgenders, you better kill that child before it gets older.
Yeah.
Because the men of the community will do it if he gets older and doesn't change. So I don't watch the news here. I'm always looking at things as an outsider, because the things that are allowed here is just, it's not allowed where I'm from at all.
Yeah, I remember a brother back in the 90s when I first got started. He told me that homosexuality in Jamaica is they don't tolerate that at all. That was just something that you just did not do. But here, we don't discriminate here in America. So you can do whatever that you want to do. So, Mr. McCobb, we're going to go ahead and end tonight's lesson, all right? And we'll continue with Vayera, the fourth chapter. The fourth week. We're behind schedule, but we're going to continue off with everything next week. All right? So we can shut it down, my brother. Yeah, we can shut it down. We good.